Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher and I'm finally bringing you the Sub Rogue. Yes, that one that pops up. At some point, every expansion, Sub just pops up and suddenly all the rogues are rolling it and people go, why? I don't like it. It is the spec that most people try and avoid. In general, some people really love it. That's fine. But in general, for the vast majority of players who play rogues, they don't really want to rock and roll with Sub. Why? Why? Simple fact is, it is more work than Assassination and Combat. And in general, it just gives you less DPS. Right? It generally is the lower of the DPS specs. Now, in fact, in Mr. Pandaria, especially at 5.4, as your gear level gets pretty good, Sub's actually fine. It does slightly less damage here and there, but overall it'll come down to what you prefer playing. Sub's actually pretty comparable. But again, it is more work to achieve sort of similar results. And in general, some people consider it less fun. It comes down to your personality. Do you like a more involved spec where you're working that little bit harder to get the same results? Some people tend to defer towards the easier option. Well, I can either do all this kind of shit, or I could just spam Sinister Strike and Eviscerate, and it doesn't matter if my Rupture falls off, as in the case with Combat. So, yeah, you can see that most people are obviously going to defer to what is the easier option and allows them to probably survive more as well. Sub is that spec that comes up because it provides so much utility. You literally become a one-man army with Sub because you have a variety of options to cope with situations that do not require the help of other raid members. That's something to bear in mind here, is that's why Sub is so imperative, especially in later efforts of Siege of Orgrimmar, is that Sub rogues can go off and be their own man. And they have so many cooldowns and so many options and tools to deal with various situations that it actually makes them pretty useful. They're one of the most utility-heavy specs that a raid will bring, and you'll notice that some guilds are actually bringing sort of 4 or 5 sub-rogues on occasion in order to cope with things, especially things like Siege Master Blackfuse. You'll see quite a lot of sub-rogues there who are obviously off on the platform on the conveyor belt, just dealing with that whole situation on their own. Barely any healers involved whatsoever, and they're just coping with it. And you can just go, okay, rogues, spec Sub, go over there, deal with it, and while the rest of the raid just copes with the rest of the fight. So, Sub is kind of more of a classic spec. We get things like Backstab. Always nice to see Backstab back in there. We have Hemorrhage thrown in there as well, which is very, very old school Sub talent. And then we have things like Fine Weakness. So, as people do get a little bit confused with this spec, got to break it down to its very simple format, okay? There are a few things we need to maintain. One is Slice and Dice, and one is Rupture. Now, classically, Rupture still falls under this category of not being very good. Its damage is actually pretty shit, but it actually benefits us in other ways, so we have to use it. Same with Slice and Dice, although Slice and Dice is just a godsend in all occasions. So what we want is we want Slice and Dice on all the time because of this, Energetic Recovery. Your Slice and Dice ability is giving you 8 energy every 2 seconds. More energy, more finishes. Very easy to understand why. We also have Sanguinary Vein. Sanguinary Vein. Increase the damage of your Rupture by 50%. Still pretty shit. And causes you to deal 35% additional damage to targets afflicted by a Rupture, Garrote, or Crimson Tempest. Yeah, Crimson Tempest actually makes an appearance for Sub. Always good to see. So, as you can see, when we have these bleed effects on our target, we actually just cause passively more damage, which means that, okay, we're going to want to have these bleed effects on our targets. Now, once you break it down into those simple things, very hard to go wrong with Sub, and it actually becomes massively more simple. Quick overview of your talents. This is one of the only specs that takes Subterfuge as kind of a must. Your stealth breaks 3 seconds after dealing and receiving hostile actions rather than doing so immediately. That's because we're going to be doing a few things in stealth, alright? Especially towards Ambush. Ambush is a very nice spell for us to use as Sub. We also want to stay in stealth and pull off more ambushes, especially as we now use Vanish as a more prominent DPS cooldown. It is a DPS cooldown as well for Assassination and for Combat, but as we are Sub now, we're taking extra benefit from those ambushes, then those vanishes, and the ability to stay in stealth gives us more vanishes. The rest of the talents are all survival stuff, so you can pick whatever you want. Elusiveness tends to be the go-to. Leeching Poison, yeah. Cheat Death, yeah, if the encounter needs it, okay? Do you need to survive this attack? Especially if you are doing these kind of one-man army situations. Cheat Death can actually be very handy. Shadow Step is pretty much a must. We've been through this in every rogue video I've done of all of Mr. Pandaria. Shadow Step, PvE, godsend, absolutely amazing for the pull, for moving around, for reducing downtime. Shadow Step is just fantastic. Level 90, Anticipation. This is more of a must than ever before. Okay, because we have this ability called Honor Among Thieves. Honor Among Thieves is right over here. When any player in your party or raid critically hits with a spell or ability, you gain a combo point on your current target. This effect cannot occur more than once every 2 seconds and can only occur while you're in combat. Okay, so because that is on a 2-second timer, guys, what you'll find is you have a very steady extra combo point every 2 seconds. It's very rare in any raid whatsoever that you haven't crit or somebody else in your raid hasn't crit in that time period. So what we have is this steady stream of combo points flooding into us on all occasions. Kind of makes it difficult to show you everything professionally on a training dummy, but we'll do that in a gameplay video, so no big worries there. Glyphs are pretty shit. I haven't even bothered to swap them. I'm going to be changing this back to Assassination. The Glyphs are terrible, pretty much, for sub. There's no doubt about that. The only one I wanted to bring up, if I can find it, is the Glyph of Sanguinary Vein, I believe it is, or Hemorrhaging Veins. There it is. The Glyph of Hemorrhaging Veins. Your Sanguinary Veins ability now also increases damage done to your targets affected by your hemorrhage. Okay, this is really good for sort of swapping targets very quickly. That's all. Nothing special. Is you can swap targets very quickly. Not if you're AoEing, because you'll be using Crimson Tempest, but if you are swapping single target, okay, Glyph of Hemorrhaging Veins just allows you to get that bleed effect up very quickly rather than having to perhaps put on a Rupture or whatever and then waste the fact that you might want to do a Slice and Dice or Eviscerate. That's just the benefit of that there. Other than that, your Glyphs are pretty shag, guys. Glyph of Redirect, I always give the big shout to because this is the best thing for swapping targets. Reduce the cooldown of Redirect by 50 seconds. Hard to get away with that thing. A Glyph of Sprint, I always give a big fucking call out to that, as well as Glyph of Feint. Glyph of Feint is magical if you're not very good on timing your feint, or you want your feint to last longer, especially if you've taken that talent Elusiveness, okay? Especially if you've taken that talent Elusiveness there, where it benefits from the extra damage. But of course, Sprint is just reducing our downtime, allowing us to DPS more. Simple as that. One of the other great benefits of Sub, before we get into the gameplay, is that it uses Haste as its primary stat as well. You obviously want to get your hit and expertise cap. Make sure those are all nice and done there. But the fact that we don't need to regen when we're swapping between combat and sub makes this very beneficial as the secondary spec that you're carrying to your raids. It would be nice to carry assassination and combat. I can see people benefiting from that. But as we just said, there are certain fights where sub really shines. Really shines in the Siege of Orgrimmar. Therefore, this one benefits a lot from haste. You're going to be getting your haste level up. As always, guys, once you get to really high gear levels, please check something like a spreadsheet at that stage to see if you can benefit from slightly more agility. You're not going to see huge gains, but there might be a point where your gear level changes depending on your random RPPM trinkets and cloaks and whatnot. So just double check if you're at really high gear levels. Use a spreadsheet like Shadowcraft is always pretty standard. You can find that on any one of the major guide websites. But in general, we're boosting up our haste, more energy, more finishes, happy days. So let's talk about our gameplay, and then we'll have to talk obviously about Shadow Dance. I want to just point out a couple of extra cooldowns. I'm going to get in combat here. So, sub comes with extra cooldowns. You've got Shadow Dance and Shadow Blades, which Shadow Blades is obviously your standard one as a rogue. Our major one is Shadow Dance, which allows us to go into kind of a fake stealth and use our stealth abilities, essentially, which means ambush. That's what it means. It means we're going to be spamming ambush while we're in combat. We also have Preparation. Preparation allows us to add 2 combo points to a target while we're in stealth. It has a 20-second cooldown. I might be wrong. 1 second. I'm sure it's 20 seconds. Don't hate me, brain. Don't make me look like a goof. 20 seconds, yeah. 20-second cooldown. Does require stealth, which means we cannot use it on cooldown. Can't use it on cooldown. So essentially we're going to use it anytime we use Vanish, anytime we use Shadow Step. And if you want my advice, if you're PvEing, simply make a macro that casts Pre-Med before you cast an Ambush, and you cannot possibly miss. You can see, show Tooltip Ambush, cast Premeditation, cast Ambush, and you'll use it without having to worry about it. It's just one of those things that you can get out of the way. We also have this one. Woohoo! Which is a wonderful cooldown, which is going to give us an extra Vanish, okay? Preparation. Oh, Pre-Med and Preparation. Bound to get the names wrong. People can rage away. Preparation. It finishes the cooldowns on Sprint, Vanish, Evasion, and Dismantle. Of course, for PvE, we're mainly looking for an extra Vanish there. Get us back in Stealth. Now, the reason this Stealth is so important, the reason Stealth is so important, the reason why Shadow Dance is so important, the reason why Vanish is so important, is because we are going to be focusing heavily on this here, this Find Weakness, okay? Find Weakness. We're going for as much uptime in a fight of Find Weakness as possible. So what I'm going to do is, I believe I'm out of combat now. I'm going to bring this up. You need a way to track Find Weakness. There it is. You can see this fine weakness debuff is on that target. Last 10 seconds. Allows your abilities to ignore 100% of the enemy's armor for 10 seconds. Okay? Bypasses 100% of the enemy's armor for 10 seconds. This is only activated by Ambush, Garrote, and Cheap Shot. These are all stealth abilities, as you can work out. So what we need to do is make sure we don't overlap them. As much as we like to blow everything under the sun as soon as we start a pull, you don't really want to do that because we really want to maximize our uptime on fine weakness, okay? We really want to maximize that stuff. So let's get some basic gameplay. Now imagine, you kind of have to bear with me a little bit because there should be more combo points coming in than what we'll actually see. Your first and foremost priority is to get Slice and Dice on. Okay, you're going to be using Backstab. And then you want to be making sure that you use Hemorrhage. Now, Hemorrhage is a super weak, mega minor DPS increase. I mean, crappy minor. So minor that the general consensus across all the sources that I checked and people I spoke to is far worth letting it fall off than try and overclip it. That's how bad it is. Just think about that for a second. It's better to let it fall off and then reapply when you can, rather than, say, waiting until now to reapply it there and keep it maintained. It's not actually worthwhile. What we're after is that initial burst that you get from, like, the combo point generating side of it and the bleed effect. Let it fall off and then make sure you get the big bump when you reapply it. So if we go for Slice and Dice, now remember this does not cause Sanguinary Vein. Your Hemorrhage doesn't unless you've taken the Glyph. Get your Rupture on. That's going to give you the Sanguinary Vein. And then you're just going to be DPSing as normal, watching your combo points flood in, and then using Eviscerate in between. Really is as simple as that, guys. Really is as simple as that. When it comes to it, you're going to be using Shadow Dance, and then you're going to be spamming your ambush in between that, keeping an eye on your combo points, so you obviously don't want to overwrite them, and doing as many Eviscerates as possible. Now, what you will be aiming to do for a little DPS increase is making sure that while under the effects of Shadow Dance, you don't need to reapply things like Slice and Dice and Rupture. You want to be doing as many Eviscerates and as many ambushes as possible, okay, during that time. So just because your Shadow Dance pops back up, if you've only got 2 seconds left on your Rupture, fire off that Rupture first, okay? Get that Rupture on. Remember, we're not after the damage of Rupture. What we're actually after is the Sanguinary Vein debuff, giving us the extra damage while we're under the effects of Shadow Dance, okay? So those ambushes are hitting much harder, the Eviscerates are hitting much harder while they're benefiting from that, okay? Very, very simple. Very, very simple. Other DPS cooldowns to consider, of course, is Vanish. Remember, this puts us back in stealth, so we get a couple of extra ambushes. You can see our ambush hits nice and hard, 200,000 ambushes, whatever it might be, and then we'll come back out of there. With the ability Subterfuge, we should be able to get at least 2 ambushes out while under the effects of Vanish. So bear in mind, it's a lovely DPS cooldown. Let's talk about our pull. Our pull is going to be relatively simple. We want the bleed debuff. Okay, we really want that bleed debuff. So if we suggest that our friend here is our boss, you might think, well, do I put Slice and Dice up first or do I put Rupture on? Remember that this procs from Garrote. Okay, so what we can actually do is a Garrote ambush. So we'll be near our boss. We're going to Shadow Step in. We're going to Garrote. Then we're going to be ambushing, get our Slice and Dice going. We want that energetic recovery. We really want that. Stick a Hemorrhage on should you feel necessary. And then when you're nice and happy, what I would do is throw in your Rupture. Fine Weakness just wore off. And then go straight into Shadow Dance. And now you're going to get Fine Weakness. And now you can just spam Eviscerate to your heart's content with pretty much a full Slice and Dice on. Remember, if you've used Premeditation, those initial couple of spells, that Garrote and that first ambush, should easily get you to 5 combo points because of Premed giving you the 2 combo points when you started. Alright? Very, very simple stuff. Slice and Dice is your main priority. You want that energetic recovery. You want the extra energy. You want Rupture on, preferably with 5 combo points, guys, because it does do some damage. So there's no point in making it worse than it already is. And that's the bleed debuff we want. We want to keep Slice and Dice on 100% of the time. We want to keep Rupture on 100% of the time. Our filler is Eviscerate. And then just use your Shadow Dance in between. And make sure that while you're under the effects of Shadow Dance, is that we're just ambushing and eviscerating to our heart's content. And that's it. That's it. It sounds a lot. It is a lot to take in. But once you break it down to why you're doing things, it actually becomes very, very simple and you're going to have a pretty good time. Just remember, you've got things like preparation and you've got these cooldowns available to you to make them work, okay? To really give you some extra bonuses. You can pull off some extra vanishes. You can get the extra shadow steps, the extra sprints. All that kind of stuff makes you super, super useful. When it comes to AoE, it's not the best. Sub is renowned for being pretty shitty with AoE. If you're up to like 7 mobs, you're just going to go Fan of Knives. Now remember, you'll still have combo points flooding in from other people, and you're going to use your Crimson Tempest in between there. That's going to give you the bleed effect. Remember, that increases your damage done. So that's why we're using Crimson Tempest there. That's giving us that extra damage done on the targets, as we talked, that Sanguinary Vein, and then you're going to use your wonderful Crimson Tempest in between there. Any less than that, you're just going to be sort of single targeting and throwing out the odd Crimson Tempest to make sure everything else is bleeding. It's really not the best of AoE specs, guys. Don't worry about it. Don't make yourself... don't struggle, okay? If you're in a fight where you've needed to roll sub, you shouldn't really be in an AoE heavy fight in the first place, so don't bother about it. Make sure your primary poison is deadly poison. Your offhand poison don't really matter. As sub, it doesn't matter completely, unless the fight dictates that you need mind numbing, or you need crippling, if you need to slow something, or you need to stop some casting. There are a few fights where this comes in handy. No doubt about it, but just make sure your deadly poison's on, and you'll be good to go. Alright guys, let's jump into some gameplay and see all this in action. Bye.